The Academy of Esports podcast is brought to you by LeagueSpot. LeagueSpot, your brand, your league, your way.
Welcome to the Academy of Esports with James O'Hagan. He's on fire. Boom shakalaka.
Welcome to the Academy of Esports podcast. I am your host, James O'Hagan. The Academy of Esports is powered by LeagueSpot, the most trusted gaming platform. And this week, my guest on the podcast is Leah Koons. She is the owner of EQME out of Austin, Texas. Leah, thank you for being a guest on the Academy of Esports podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me, James.
It is great to have somebody who's involved in marketing, especially when it comes to gaming and esports. There's obviously it's a huge part of getting, I guess, the word out, the message out. But it's something I think that, especially for a lot of our students who may listen to the podcast or teachers, they don't necessarily know where marketing and esports fits into where it would fit into, I guess, the ecoverse around gaming and esports. It's not something that's really focused on, but you do it. But before we get too much into that topic, we want to give our audience an opportunity to get to know you a little bit. So I have some basic questions that I'd like to ask all of our guests here today. So Leah, first off, what is a game, and it doesn't have to be a video game, that stands out as having been important to you at some point in your life? And why was that experience meaningful?
I think this is really a tie between two. I think the first video game I just got super lost in was Witcher 3. I'd played a lot of games before that, but Witcher 3 was the game even before. I was like, I need to redo my whole PC. This is like a big thing. Luckily, I worked for a gaming company, so I just was like, guys, I'm just not going to be working. I will be playing this game for 2 days. But we got off for World of Warcraft launches at that time. And I was like, I don't play World of Warcraft, but I am going to play this game till my eyes bleed. So that was a lot of fun, and it felt nice to get super into it. I think the main game, it isn't a video game, but Dungeons and Dragons was, I launched a brand within the Dungeons and Dragons space with that company called D&D Beyond. And I just fell in love with everything about D&D except playing a barbarian, which is a lot of math. But I just fell into that space and I loved the game. I've always loved fantasy and I loved the social storytelling aspect. I was talking to one of my friends about how it is such an important part of my life now. I feel lost if I'm not in a D&D campaign. And it is such a core tenet of who I am, and a social the social thread that kind of holds me together. My husband raids and plays a bunch of WoW, and you could not catch me doing that, but you can catch me playing a lot of Dungeons and Dragons and listening to it. So that's kind of the community that I really fell into within the gaming space. I played a lot of Heroes of the Storm for a while, but then everybody got way better and I didn't. I was like, okay, I'm not going to do the multiplayer competitive stuff. I'm just going to play D&D and play my story games.
So Dr. Rachel Cohort is if you do not know who she is a huge Witcher fan and a Henry Cavill fanatic. And she's big into the psychology of games. But I have to ask, with Dungeons and Dragons, my therapist actually has been playing a campaign for many years with same friends. They actually write the story. Like they play the campaign and then somebody keeps track of what actually happens and they write it out like a book. Yeah. Have you done something to that degree when you campaign?
A lot of the people I play with are far better at taking notes than I am. My notes are like, I died, we killed bad guy. So not as intense, but a lot of my friends have played in these huge long campaigns, and I have too for years. And I'm always hoping someone else does it, because no, I won't. I know that no one wants my notes, but my notes are like the random, funny quips than stupid questions. So everyone has these deep, really detailed notes. And then I'm like, and I think we saw a hedgehog. And they're like, what? Yeah, I guess technically we did. I don't know. It's like, that's all I remember. So.
Well, for me, if I ever do take up Dungeons and Dragons again, I played it in middle school, but if I do, I think I'll be a minstrel. Hopefully I can be a tuba player.
Of course.
Just walk around just like a battle tuba. you know, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
BattleTube is the way to go.
All right, a second question for you. Maybe it's totally eccentric or maybe it's quite traditional, but what is your superpower? That thing that you do better than most people, or what do you wish you could do?
Um, I am I'm really good with people. My first degree was in psychology. I was very involved in therapy and really being able to read people, understand why people are asking questions the way they are, why they're responding the way they are. So I think my superpower is my husband kind of calls it the golden retriever of like you can let Leah into any room and she's going to be friends with every person and everyone will figure out a reason to like her, hopefully. Um, I'm really glad that I'm good at that. I think sometimes it would be better if I had a little social anxiety, but I don't. I'm lucky that I get to have faith in people the majority of the time.
All right, fantastic. Um, Name that one song. Whenever it hits your speakers, you're going to sing along to it.
Oh, any song. Probably, oh gosh, that's so hard. There's so
But
many
you
good
gotta
ones.
have one.
I know. It's probably, oh God, this is so hard. Um, right now, I think it's probably that Oogum Boogum song that's like super popular on TikTok. I don't know why it's so good. Um, but also any Disney song. I just like it's I lose power.
Well,
Zero to Hero from Hercules, I would like to say, is probably the best
oh
song
my
that's ever
God,
been created.
my favorite Disney movie. Thank
Oh
you.
yeah, it's the best. I love it. I
Yes.
love that movie so much.
All right. Okay. See, we're finding out other things about each
Yeah,
other. That's
there you go.
favorite Disney film. Perfect. What is one thing about your field that surprises people when they first hear about it?
I think
Again, you're a so let's tell people first what
Sure.
exactly it is that you do, and then what surprises people.
Yeah, well, once I figure out what I do, I'll let you know. So I started at a company called Curse, basically folding T-shirts for Team Curse, which is now Team Liquid, and basically was the loud, organized person, which meant that I got funneled into the marketing team, and that kind of went from learning how to run a store and do some merchandise stuff to helping biz dev teams, business development, sales teams run events, figure out what they need, how we can help. That went into launching brands like D&D Beyond, and a lot of that also turned into handling like strategic partnerships and sponsorships, like Alienware sponsoring Team Liquid, or sponsoring things like League of Legends, as well as events. So I ran events globally for a few brands, and those are everything from booths to business development meeting stuff. You can really run the gambit. So there's been a lot of, I think people, one, always get, can you believe that people get paid to play video games? Which is like, yes, I do believe it. It's literally why I do the job I do.
Right.
But I think that what's surprising to people, especially that are first getting into it, they want to get into gaming as a career, but they think that they have to make a game or stream it professionally or play it professionally, and realizing that there is, for every tiny niche of every industry to keep it running, there's a job for it. So marketing doesn't mean that I'm just running ads. There's 50 different jobs within marketing that you could do, and that is true for every part of this industry. There are people in HR that only work for gaming companies. There are people
Oh,
in
those must be
every
fun.
facet. Oh yeah, I feel bad for
The
the
HR
HR
at a
people
gaming
in
company.
gaming. Yeah,
Mm,
not I wouldn't go down that route, but
no.
some people love it. So I think it's really, one, that it exists and it's as powerful an industry as it is, and two, that um, there just seems to be this lens of, like, to be involved in film, you don't have to just be an actor. There are loads of other things that have to happen to make a film. So that same thing can obviously apply to the gaming space, and you don't have to learn how to make video games to work in gaming. Thank God, because I certainly would not have learned how to make a video game.
Well, and for me, I'm a terrible gamer. But as you go back to that movie industry analogy, that look at who makes every film, and it's like, who's the key grip, and what do they do?
Yeah.
Actually, I think the key grip is the person who's supposed to make sure there's continuity in the scene, so when they don't have like things
Maybe.
going all over the place. I think that's what they
I got
do.
no idea, but I'm
Right.
sure they're doing a great job and they're very important.
But you bring up something interesting too about this, because when it comes to marketing, when it comes to this isn't about just the competition that you're talking about. You're also talking about, again, using the medium to send a message, to sell a message, to sell an idea, to bring out other, I guess, connections into pop culture. Earlier, you made reference to TikTok, and I'm like, well, I don't watch TikTok. It's a huge time suck for me. I tried it once, and I was like, this is a problem. I'm going to stop this right now.
Yep.
But when you're talking about this, you and I, when we talked before this, you talked about you cannot fall into the gaming space. You have to treat it as a business. What do you mean by? I mean, it sounds like what you're saying in that statement is you can't just say I'm going to be a gamer and that's it. There's a lot more to it than just being that.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I kind of fell into the gaming space through like my first job, but that you know the reason I excelled in it and continued to grow and learn new things is because I knew that it was a brutal industry that you had to work really hard. Brutal makes it sound very intimidating, but it's one of those industries that everyone wants to be in, and you have to work really, really hard. You have to work harder than than I would assume in some other industries, just to put your time in and to get your reps in. Especially when you talk about people that want to be streamers or want to be professional gamers, they just think that it's going to be a willy-nilly, thing that they can just hop on stream and that there isn't an art to it. And if you show up, then it will work. And that's not the case necessarily. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and that's just being a public figure within gaming. Within the business side of it, I guess, kind of the not being a forward facing, not being a personality or a player. um, a lot of the people that I know that got their start in gaming did it because they were really involved in gaming communities, and they were doing things like making banners for people or running a community or being a mod or something like that, that kind of got their foot in the door and got them some experience, which really I mean, the majority of people I know, that's how they got started. It isn't, you're not just going to fall into it, or maybe you will, but if you're going to thrive in it, you have to have that business mentality, kind of like when you are in school, right? When I left college and I left school, I was really thrown off by the lack of structure that existed. I was very good at school and I got very good grades, and I knew what I was supposed to do to get the grade. And once I got the grade, I got the GPA. And once I got the GPA, I get the degree. And then that's how life is supposed to go. But in a career, that isn't really how it goes, and in gaming, that sometimes isn't how it goes. You have to really build your own structure, build your own plan, and execute it like that. Otherwise, there is no one to put the structure there for you, basically.
Well, and the other part of this too, part of this discussion that I think is important, is you as a woman in this space, in a very male dominated space. Can you speak to just how you try to navigate and operate? Because again, a lot of men are obviously out there just like, oh, she's not a gamer, or oh, it's a girl, she's a gamer. It's one or the other. So tell me, how do you find yourself, especially when it comes to marketing? Because again, you're going to a lot of these things saying, I know marketing and games, that's fine, but I know it's going to make people want to come to you. How do you fight that? Is it a fight to even have that conversation sometimes?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think as you grow, I've been in the gaming industry for 10 years now, and I've built myself a reputation from working at all these large companies, and I have, plenty of clout on my resume, so I feel that usually calms them in general. But I think what's important to note here is that it isn't, even though we are 50% of the population, it seems that every industry is a male dominated industry, because that's just the way things have landed. We can get into a whole socioeconomic, whole gender studies discussion. We'll probably save that for a different podcast. But regardless of what industry you go into as a woman, you need to work harder in a lot of ways, and you're going to be talked over. And I feel like I have a counter of it has been X amount of days since I've been mansplained what a video game is, to someone that's been in the industry for years. I think you just deal with it by having faith that I've had great experiences, and that whenever I've had to go to HR for certain situations, which I've had to multiple times, that the right people show up and they help you,
Uh-huh.
and that there is it is frustrating and it is really difficult, and you do second guess yourself a lot. But if you know that you're good and you're delivering good results, and you're a good person, then that will continue to benefit you forever. Um, it is hard and it is frustrating to get questioned or explained the same thing 15 times when you're the expert in the room, but calmly reminding them that you are the expert in the room, and that they have their own reasons for acting the way they do. Everyone has things they're trying to prove, but you don't. You can only control how you react to it. And remaining calm and professional and getting a little sassy usually just shuts that right up.
Well, and for me, I guess I could speak to the men who may be listening to this as well. Again, Leah is coming with credentials, but again, there's a reason she's hired. There's a reason that person is in the room talking to you about these things. You don't, again, men, I feel like sometimes you have to feel like you have to have all the answers. I am one who's very easy to say, again, I'm a terrible gamer. I don't know marketing. Please teach me, please show me these things. That should be the approach we should be taking. This is not an indictment on your lack of intelligence or lack of anything else. Leah is a type of person who is there to again take you to that next level, to show you the possibilities and the potentials. And so I guess as we're sitting here having this, if you're watching the podcast, we actually have a very different look. I'm wearing a black turtleneck and black headphones, and Leah's got on white everything, and it's like we're just like good cop, bad cop over here, or you know. But I think it's important too for if you had a piece of advice to give a young man who maybe is meeting you for the first time, or a lot of them are coming into this scared. I mean, they don't know what they're doing. They're unsure. What are some of the best questions to ask somebody if you're getting into marketing? Let's say you're meeting with a marketing person such as yourself. What are some good questions to ask that marketing person about, the thing that you want to succeed in? Or what are the questions that you should be asked by a good marketing person?
Sure. I mean, I think the main thing for anybody going into gaming is to not be afraid to say when you don't know something, especially when you're working with any level of professional. If you're a newbie, we know if you don't know what you're talking about and you're trying to act like you do, and it's totally fine to not know what you're talking about sometimes. I love not knowing something and being able to say, I don't know, I'm going to find somebody that's better at this than I am and go ask them. That's really how you grow. And that's why there are mentorships and there are these larger organizations. That's why the system exists the way it does. So not being afraid to say, I don't know. What do you what do you think, or am I doing this wrong, or does this make sense to you? Those things mean a lot, especially to people that are in the space, instead of having to watch someone act like they know what's going on and then us know, hey, there's a different way to do this, or you're not doing it the way that's optimized. Every company does things differently. Every gaming community and game has a completely different group of people sometimes. While yes, we can always segment into, this is a specific kind of, this is who we think plays Call of Duty versus who plays Animal Crossing versus who plays Dungeons and Dragons, and we can archetype those people within a marketing stance. Everything has intricacies and everything has tweaks. So taking the time to learn that and understand it, I think, is important. Gaming and marketing is something that moves really fast. Trends change constantly, especially on social media. It can be really exhausting. But I think just being open to not knowing, but being always open to learning. I think the most important thing as we look at hiring and working with people, it isn't that I'm necessarily hiring for everything right now. I'm hiring and looking for someone to work with the aptitude to learn. Do you work well with people? Are you down to really research something? Are you down to admit that you don't know something and to dive in and ask for help or find the answer on your own? It's really aptitude over exactly the 15 skills that you have, if that makes sense.
No, I think it does. The lifelong learner, I think, is kind of what you're looking for, is that person who is always hungry to find out, not rest on laurels, to go out there and find, if I'm summing it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Just don't have a, I've gotten really far because for a lot of my career, I tried to not have as much of an ego.
Mm.
I just tried being easy to work with and nice and kind and hardworking and figuring out what I can do and do it well. And I mean, even like 3 days ago, someone found this Reddit thread. I used to run these exhibitor lounges for Curse, and my friend said, "I just found this. It was so cute." And it was somebody that posted like, this woman that worked at the PAX Lounge was so nice, and she went out of her way. And I think I gave them a wristband for their poster or something to hold, and it was just this moment, and like other people commented on it, and it just is such a reminder, especially as I'm starting my own business now and I see so many of the people I've worked with coming to support, that all of those relationships matter and everybody in this space matters. The good people will usually float to the top and will stay there for a long time, but every interaction you have matters. And you know, everybody is still fighting to have a right to work in gaming every day. So just keep a good attitude and be nice, because if you're not nice, you won't work in gaming for too long, hopefully.
Well, and it's interesting you say it that way too, because I think there are people who are fighting to raise their voice in this space. Let's talk about, let's kind of use that to shift a little bit into, again, you said earlier, you don't just fall into this. If you want to get into this, you really should treat it like a business. When it comes to marketing or getting your business set up early, if you were telling somebody who was just starting out, what are some of the things that they should consider doing right out the gate? Again, you never know when you're going to quote unquote blow up. So, you know, what should be those things that they have ready to go, or where do you see our symptoms of success?
I think it's, if you're starting your own business or you're doing any personal branding, one, it's the most boring thing to say, but it's important, is managing your social handles, getting your name, getting your website, owning your name as a URL, owning your company name as URL, basic things like that. You might not need it immediately, but you'll like it when you have it. I think in general, when you start out in any industry, especially in gaming, you need to be a jack of all trades. I didn't know how to do a lot of the stuff that I was doing when I started. I didn't know how to run a store for an esports company. I didn't know how to, I didn't know how to do a lot of the stuff, right? But especially in the beginning, I worked a lot and I honestly fell on my face a lot. But I got up and I would just research it. I would look at companies that were doing it better. Look at companies there's the difference between endemic, which means it would be in gaming, and non-endemic, which means it's something else like professional football or movies or something like that. And looking and saying, okay, cool, well, a brand is doing this in movies, let's say. Would that work in gaming? What about it in gaming what could work and what wouldn't? Because they all are different. So I think what we were saying earlier is just always being hungry, always keeping an eye open. And when you like what you're doing, it becomes a hobby, right? You are always looking at the branding and the way that this commercial is run and what does that work? Or, comparing something like watching the Super Bowl to LCS finals. What are the differences that I see? What do I like about it? What do we need to change? You just always keep your eyes open and are always looking for inspiration, especially when you first start out. And I think that it continues throughout your career. You are always looking for new stuff. But if you're just starting out, one, try to leave your ego at the door. Be okay with not knowing. Get your handles under control. And if you feel like you're getting tense and frustrated and scared, try to take a deep breath and realize that everybody is trying to do the best they can all the time, even when things aren't going your way or their way. And just remember that every interaction you have is something that someone's probably going to remember. So everybody needs to be on good behavior and be nice to each other. Basically, it's hard sometimes in business, but I think that's one of the most important things. Good people find jobs.
Well, and then also too, and this was something we talked about when we chatted last time, was even about just having a schedule, and having a place where people can support you. I was surprised. I put it in on the Academy of Esports podcast anchor page. you can actually become a contributor. You know, and it wasn't something that I actively worked to set up because I wasn't, but then I realized there were some people who actually gave me money.
Yeah.
I was surprised. It was like, whoa, this is kind of pleasant. What should be, again, things like Patreon, as an example, or even just, again, monetizing your stream. When it comes to doing something like that, do you have any advice for people just getting started?
Yeah. I mean, if you're just getting to be a content creator, I'm not a content creator, but I've worked with a lot of them, and some have really great business models. I think if that's something um, that you're really interested in and you want to take it seriously, one, you need to have a schedule. You can't just pop in and pop out whenever you want to, because you won't have the one, it doesn't work very well algorithmically. And also, you need to know when you can be on and when you can turn off. Having your brain always on and in performance mode will only serve to drain you. So, you need to know when you need to clock in and know when you need to clock out. I think there's a lot of business things, like you should have a business account and make sure that you're not, specific money isn't going to different places. Things can get messy there as soon as you start dealing with tax season. I know that probably sounds very overwhelming, but I'm just having to go through some of those processes now. So keeping that in mind, that businesses are run differently than personal finances for very good reasons. I think also there is this expectation that just because you've started, one, you have to love every single second of it. It will change your relationship with the games you play sometimes, because it becomes a job and you have to treat it that way. Like you were saying, schedules are also super important. I feel like I had another really good one. Oh, sponsorships. So this is kind of my bread and butter. This is where I was working with large brands, Alienware, Riot, all of these people. I still do that now for a few of my clients. Of people will approach you, or we will approach other content creators or events, looking for partnerships and sponsorships. And there's a lot of want to just jump on anything, especially when you're first starting, because you're like, I just want to have had a sponsor, and I totally get that. I think you do have to be, you have to treat your brand and the work you're doing with the level of respect that you want them to treat you. And if it isn't a match for your community, it isn't a good idea to take it, even though it feels really good and it's a big dopamine hit to get that first sign. If those numbers and those results don't come back in, that won't feel great. So you have to think about it strategically. Think about, what are you going to do if you get this sponsorship? How are you going to represent this partner? Is this a good fit? Do you just want it because you want to feel like you ticked something off the box, or is this actually really applicable to your audience? The large streamers, the huge ones that everyone wants to be, make huge amounts of money through these brand sponsorships. And I mean, I've worked with them, I've paid them to do it, and vice versa, right? But they become something that's more impression based. That's when you want a lot of eyeballs on your brand. And brands are more just thinking, okay, cool, we just want to get our name in front of a whole bunch of people. It's actually the mid-sized streamers or the smaller streamers that have really niche audiences, that have a really good relationship with them, that trust this person, that feel like they know them, that then trust their brand opportunities and say, hey, I really actually use this, I like it a lot. There's a different mentality there. So I would just keep that in mind. There are always results that these companies are going to be looking at on the back end, and you need to figure out which boxes you can tick. And is that really good ad reads? Can you do that? Do you need to practice? Is it impressions? Do you have a huge following and that's a big benefit? Is it that your community really trusts you and will say, oh, okay, if this person is sponsored by Alienware, I support them. So I want to buy something from Alienware to show them that, hey, we really care about this influencer. So that's a very long answer, but keeping that in mind, I think when we talk about sponsorships, is something that sometimes I see people take sponsorships and I'm like, oh no, like this isn't structured well and you're just doing it to do it. This isn't going to end well for you.
Or even not know, like the question I always ask a lot of my students when I was in education is, what is your brand? Right? I wouldn't ask them like, who are you? I would say, what is, like, if I looked you up online, what would I find? Who are you? How have you presented yourself to the world? And when you kind of flip the question around like that, it becomes interesting how they start to look at themselves. That if somebody was from the outside looking in, and this is every kid, but a lot of kids who perpetuate the idea that they want to be streamers, they want to be in online spaces, they want to be an influencer. But what I also find interesting when I ask that question is, just as you said about the sponsorships, and this is something I know in Scholastic Esports, there's been a huge problem because people are not willing, by and large. Again, educators who, by the best of intentions, a lot of them are not working for money. They're doing this out of passion and helping students. But they don't take the time to look at the family tree, if you will, of the brand. They don't look at it from top to bottom. They don't look and see who's on the board, or there's certain gaming companies that are backed by, gambling, or they're backed by weed. And you have to say, can you as a teacher then answer to a school board member or a community member when they come and maybe bring this information to you? When I look at a brand, I have to date it from top to bottom. I can't just date it from the brand name that is there. So I guess, as you were kind of alluding to in the part about, not just taking any sponsorship that comes, but really, like I said, date it, learn more about it, see if it fits with you top to bottom. Is that a good way to, I guess, vet your sponsorship deals?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at the overall parent company, sometimes that's applicable, sometimes it isn't. It just kind of depends on how you feel about it. You know, I've been through a few acquisitions and I can speak from being one of the, an acquired company. Sometimes it's just you've been doing your own thing the whole time, and then you can get affiliated with another brand, and sometimes that can be amazing and a huge boon, and sometimes it can be frustrating because it's
Mhm.
like, we didn't make, this is totally separate. But I think just looking at it strategically of, is this actually a brand that I want to be attributed to long term? And how is this brand interacting with you? Do they have good partnership people? Do they have people that seem like they care? Um, there's a lot of people that have, companies that have partnership teams that aren't active,
Mhm.
and that can be really frustrating to work with. So yeah, I mean, you always need to do research on the brands that you're working with and the values they stand for. Sometimes companies are going to fall on their face. I mean, it's if you start working with a company that has some terrible, I don't know, PR stuff come out, that isn't always your fault unless for some reason you knew something was going on.
Mhm.
That kind of stuff will happen, but you just need to go into these things knowing with, kind of a clear conscience of, I thought I was making the right decision for what I was doing at the time. And this was the information I had, and I acted on it. And, as long as you have that clear conscience, hopefully you'll be okay, and nothing too wild will happen.
Well, and as those who may not know, the only group that's ever sponsored the Academy of Esports is League Spot. And just to clear everything up, I work for the company. So I put my money where my mouth was, and decided to work. I like the company so much, I work for them now. So as we start to wrap up here, and we went through a lot of things today in a very condensed, short amount of time. And Leah, thank you so much for
Yeah.
everything that you've given us today. But before we go in the as part of making experiences for young people better through collaboration, is there an organization or a person or a group that you feel is doing great things in your area, especially around marketing or gaming, or just something you admire from afar?
That's a great question. There's so many great people in gaming in general. There are so many great people I know that you can, ask for advice, slide into people's DMs respectfully. I've even had that happen in the last like week or so. Somebody reached out and just said, "Hey, I saw your LinkedIn, I saw your Twitter stuff. I just need a sanity check. I'm trying to get into gaming." Have faith that those people will reach out and be helpful. Don't be afraid to do it respectfully. Also understand that people have a lot going on, but there are a lot of incredible groups and Discord servers and things that you can really get into that will sanity check you a little bit. So don't be afraid to leverage those groups because that's what they're there for. I think when this is kind of the blending of my two worlds, right? My beginning in psychology and my love for therapy and my love for anything regarding psych. Healthy Gamer is a really, really great resource. He puts out videos and explains things in ways that people that are gamers might understand a little bit better.
Mhm.
And also, he is really good at talking to parents, talking to kids about why their parents might be acting a certain way, and kind of vice versa. I've always loved watching things like therapy, and that's something I've always been into. I think mental health is super important. So, if that's something you're interested in, or you just kind of want to demystify some of these things, I love Healthy Gamer. They've done a lot of great work, I think, in terms of demystifying some stuff and maybe putting it into terms that gamers might understand a little bit different and is more relatable.
Well, and again, Leah, just because of time, I know you did want to talk about parents and gaming and connecting with their
Sure.
kids. And just real brief, do you have, again, because I know we're right up on the time, but do you have any other additional thoughts that you want to just add to that? Because I want to give you that opportunity as well, too, because it sounds like you're very passionate about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, gaming can get a bad rap because, of all of the standard talking points of why gaming is terrible, which we know isn't, is statistically proven to not necessarily be true. But as a parent, I wouldn't be afraid to, one, of course, you can play games. They don't have to be these crazy, fast paced, intimidating looking games. There are loads of story based games. And it's a great opportunity to learn how to do something new, especially with your kid that they can teach you. There are a lot of great educational games as well. I mean, video games win BAFTAs. I mean, there's a whole realm of video games, just like books or any other art, where you can find something that maybe you and your family can bond over. I would just make sure that you don't feel that whatever impressions you're getting from gaming is not based in just panic because it seems really fast paced and weird and new.
Mm.
I know I've seen parents where they don't get it or they don't understand it or they think it's not a tool. I mean, I can attest that gaming is a huge social tool for me as an adult, much less as a kid. I mean,
Hmm.
the same way my stepdad goes and plays tennis with his guys or wants to go be in a fantasy football league is the way that me and a lot of the younger generations are handling games. I keep up with a lot of my best friends because of gaming, because we live in different areas. So there is a huge social positive aspect to gaming. There's a huge educational aspect to it as well with specific games, art direction, story writing, world building. So I wouldn't be too harsh on it. Know that there are games that you might not like and might not want your kids to play, and that's totally fine. But there are great, beautiful games out there. And even if you don't want to play, watching streamers with your kid, if that's something, watching games together could be really fun. So I just hate seeing parents be like, no, games are awful, and I don't want them to do that. When I was a kid and I wasn't playing games, I was off in my own world reading a book, which I guess for some reason is seen as better, but I was still not doing what I was supposed to be doing. And I got a lot of good out of that, and I continue to get a lot of good out of video games. So don't be too freaked out by them. They're good, and your kid can make a lot of money in the video game space. I promise. They
If
might
they
not be
treat it like a
ninja
business.
if they treat it like a business. And I think that it can be a really exciting industry to be in. It's a lot of hard work. It all happens very, very fast, but I think there's a lot of good in this industry, and I love it. I wouldn't want to work anywhere else.
Well, Leah Koons, marketing consultation and events expert, owner of EQME. Thank you for being a guest on the Academy of Esports podcast today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
That will do it for this week on the Academy of Esports. I've been your host, James O'Hagan. Esports are organized competitive video games allowing schools to redefine their athletic culture, diversify opportunities for student participation, promote good physical and mental health, increase collegiate scholarship pathways, and play games. We can never forget the importance of play. The mission of the Academy of Esports is to support these ideals. The vision of the Academy of Esports is for all students to experience the fun and joy of playing competitive video games. You may follow me on Twitter @Jim O'Hagan. That's JIMOHAGAN, and through the Academy of Esports account at TAO Esports. It's a great way to get the latest blog posts, podcast episodes, and news coming out of esports and education. And remember, you can continue your engagement by going to www.taoesports.com. You can also connect through Facebook at www.facebook.com/TAO Esports. Thanks again for listening, and I look forward to our time again next week.